Hello everybody. This is the second of my run through of tents or shelters that I've used an awful lot over the years, and as somebody already guessed, this is the Mountain Laurel Designs Trailstar. Now I've had this shelter. Is it a tent? Is it a tarp? Somewhere in between the two, I think, as I'll show. But I've had it now for 13 years, and it's been on many long walks, the toughest of which was the Scottish watershed, where for 700 miles it had to put up with heavy rain, high winds, and many stormy nights. It's also been on a walk from Yosemite Valley to Death Valley in California, the GR5 from Lake Geneva through the Alps to the Mediterranean, a 500-mile walk on the Continental Divide Trail in the Rocky Mountains in Colorado, several TGO challenges. In total, it's accompanied me on walks of over 2,000 miles, many hundreds of nights. It's never let me down. Now, the Trailstar itself is simply the shaped tarp, the outer. Mine, with the seam sealed, and the seam sealing is the original one I did when it was new. I've never replaced it and it's never leaked. And all the guy lines attached. It weighs 570 grams. But of course, it's not really usable like that. For a start, you need pegs to go with it, a minimum of 10, and you need some sort of floor. Now, you could use a bivy bag, which I know some people do, I never have, or a ground sheet of some sort. Now, I've got two ground sheets, which I'll show later. One is about 25 years old and is simply flat sill nylon with pegging points at the corners. Another is a shaped ground sheet designed to go with the Trailstar and made by the now sadly no longer existing company Works. And I also have an inner net with a ground sheet made by Works. Now, I got these at the time because MLD did not make them for the Trailstar. Now you can get a shaped ground sheet and you can get an inner net from MLD. And that's what I would do at the moment. In fact, that's probably what I will do soon, as all my various ground sheets and inners are old and starting to wear out. The last time I used a netting inner, which is only a few weeks ago, I found there were holes in it and I had to stick tape over them to stop the midges coming in, and all of the ground sheets have now got holes in. I reckon they need replacing, but they have all been used a lot and have done very well. The total weight I end up carrying with the Trailstar plus the components is about a kilo. 960 grams with the Works ground sheet is, I think, the lightest. I think it's a bit over 1,015 grams with the inner net, but overall around a kilo for the total weight. And when you look at the weights on the MLD website, that's around what you come to with the MLD components as well. A big difference now is that this is a sill nylon Trailstar. There is also a lighter weight Dyneema composite one, but this is the original sill nylon Trailstar. The current ones are sill poly, which is very slightly heavier, but has some advantages. It doesn't stretch when wet in particular. I haven't tried the sill poly Trailstar, so this is an original one, as I say, from 13 years ago. But now I'm going to get it out of its stuff sack and show you how I pitch it. Now, the stuff sack itself, this is not the original one. The original stuff sack tore a long time ago. And I think with the pegs, some of the pegs are ones I got when I got the Trailstar. Some have been added since, but I always take a selection of different pegs anyway for different ground conditions. Anyway, that's enough of an introduction. Let's get on with pitching it. Now, when I was describing the Trailstar, you'll notice I made no mention of poles. And that's because you can pitch the Trailstar with trekking poles. You can get a tent pole specially designed for it, but I've always used trekking poles. In fact, I've always used pacer poles. I don't include these in the weight of the Trailstar because I'd have them with me anyway, and during the day I'm using them, they're not in my pack. Now, in terms of length, because the Trailstar is very versatile, you can vary the length of the poles and the height the Trailstar will be. If it's really stormy, a low profile is more stable. If it's dry and sunny, but you want to use it just in case the weather changes, you can open up the whole of the front, have masses of airspace at the sides. What I'm going to show you now is the configuration I mostly use in the Scottish Highlands, which is where I do most of my camping. But be aware, there's lots of possible variations, which if I showed you, this video would be several hours long. Now, in terms of height, I always start off with the pacer pole at its maximum length, which I'll have to measure to tell you what that is. But the thing is, you can vary it and get, you know, the height that seems right for the weather and for your comfort. Obviously, the higher, the easier it is to get in and out, and the easier it is to live in. But first of all, putting the poles to one side, we need to get the Trailstar out itself and the bag of pegs, and you'll notice I just stuff it in the stuff sack. I don't fold it, roll it, or anything like that. I've always reckoned that you don't want to have creases in the same places all the time, because that can create a weak point. This may not be true with sil nylon, I don't know. But anyway, I found that just stuffing it in the stuff sack works perfectly well. Now, I said I carry a variety of pegs, and the ones I use for the 5 main pegging points are these long eastern ones. As long as these will go fully in the ground, they're what I use because they're very strong and they don't come out when the wind is tugging at them. And the thing with the Trailstar is that's important. It has to be pegged out firmly in order to be stable. It's not like a freestanding tent. It doesn't have a structure of its own. You create the structure by how you pitch it. Now, the first thing I would do when pitching it is find out where the side I want to be the door is, which can be anywhere, but I have a long guy line attached to the door. And the idea with that being that will go round the pole and then the pole will go out there. And this creates a door. There's no actual door, of course. There's no zip and there's nothing you can close. And again, depending on the weather, you can have the door high or low. I always try and pitch it obviously so that the door is away from the prevailing wind. Sometimes, I think on 2 or 3 occasions, I've actually got up in the night and re-pegged it and put the door somewhere else because the wind has shifted. But generally, there's enough room inside that I can be far enough away, if necessary, from the door not to get rain on me or the wind disturbing me. But once I've decided where the door is going to be, I will then shake it out. You can see that it is big. The Trailstar covers a lot of ground, and some people say that this huge footprint is awkward, but it isn't really, because of the versatility. Again, it's not like a freestanding tent. It doesn't need a flat area on which to be pitched. I've had it pitched in small areas where, if you like, there's a big bank here and this side has been up here. It still pitches okay, as long as you've got a flat enough area inside to lie down and sleep comfortably. That, in fact, is all you need. Now, there's a light breeze today, but no strong wind. If it was windy, the first thing I would do is peg out 2 points at the back, simply to stop the whole thing blowing away. They won't necessarily be in the same position when I've finished, but that would just be, you know, to keep it secure. Once I've roughly selected where the door's going to be, and assuming the weather allows, I will make sure at the moment it's inside out, because these clips are for attaching the inner mesh tent. So obviously I need to completely turn it over before doing any pegging. I have, until I got used to it, occasionally been caught out by that, started pegging it out and then realised that I needed to turn it over. But once it's in the right position and spread out, I start away from the door, and each side, it's got 5 sides. At each side there is a seam and a guyline, and the first 2 I peg out. There is no correct way of doing this, but over the years, you know, you get into a standard way of doing it that works, so you stick to it. But to peg out what are going to be the corners at the back, and then there's one more here, which is the very rear of the tent. All of these guy lines are adjustable. If you want plenty of airspace coming in, you can lengthen them so that the sides are, you know, above the ground, or you can shorten them so that you're essentially pegging the edge of the Trailstar right on the ground. I usually do something in the middle, and of course you can shorten or lengthen them if necessary to get the pegs in. Once those 3 pegs are in, we now get to the possibly tricky but I always think interesting part, which is putting the pole in and pegging out what will be the door. Now, the pole handle goes in there. There's a reinforced patch here at the top for it. It goes like that, and then I take the other pole, pull this taut. Today I'm going to go for a high door as it's calm, but I basically wrap this guy line a few times round this pole, pull it tight, and let's shorten that a bit, or rather let's lengthen that a bit, because this guy line is adjustable. Where you have it adjusted does depend on how high you're having this top pole, this front pole. And then peg this down. That'll do for now. I would make sure it went fully into the ground, you know, if I was actually pitching it up in the hills. And then take a couple more pegs, and now I'm going to peg out the sides here and here. And this creates the door. Now, as you can see, it's up, it's usable, but it's all a bit loose. And I normally find at this point that the first three pegging points are now going to need repegging again to pull it taut. So we take this one back here, and this one back, and I could tighten this one just by adjusting the guy line, or I could peg it out. I think actually I will peg it out, which will get a better pitch. There we are. And if the weather's good, this is it. The Trailstar is up. You can see the shape, you can see the door. However, there are pegging points, say, on each side, which I always peg out just in case. And that really is the Trailstar finished. One thing though, when it's really windy, the wind can do this. So I have a second guy line for the front, which just adjusts, you know, with a taut line hitch, which is great when tensioned. It locks, but it's easy to slide. And a loop that goes over the pole. With this, I can peg the pole out. You can't see me now, but I'm picking the pole out to the side. You can see the angle. And once I've done that, I can then move this one to the side. And this now, that is now much more stable. Like this, that is rigid. So anytime it's windy, I will do this. Of course, anytime it's windy, this is going to be shorter anyway. But having two guy lines makes a huge difference. And given that a spare guy line weighs a few grams only, and I'm carrying spare pegs anyway, it doesn't really make any difference to the weight. So there we have it. There is the Trailstar. Masses of room inside. You know, it can sleep two. It's better for one in terms of headroom. Headroom's great for me at 5'8". I know people who are tall find, you know, it only works in the highest configuration, which isn't always ideal. Sometimes, so I've had it low enough that, you know, I can't sit up in it, but it is stopping the storm blowing it down. Now, I mentioned what goes inside it. This is my basic 25-year-old at least ground sheet, which is sil nylon. It's got pegging points at each corner, and I just lay it out inside wherever I want to. By preference, I sleep with my head near the door so I can see as much as possible, but if the weather's bad, I'll probably be at the back of the tent as far from the door as possible. But this weighs 215 grams, which I think is the same weight as the Sil Poly one from MLD. The Ook Works one is shaped so it fits in with the shape of the Trailstar. So it's longer at one end than the other. It does have attachment points to go onto the pegs, but it's not quite as versatile as the flat ground sheet because of the way it's shaped and has to fit. But it is lighter at, I think, 175 grams. And then there's the mesh inner, which is essentially the Ook Works ground sheet with a mesh door, with a big zipped T-shaped zip opening, and again, and this is attachment points to hang it from the pole, and then it attaches to those little clips I showed on the fly sheet, and it works very well. I've used this a fair bit in the summer, though overall I prefer to use the Trailstar outside of midge weather, so that I've got, you know, the freedom of all the space inside without having to be in a mesh inner. Anyway, that's the Trailstar. I think it's absolutely brilliant. I'm also very pleased that, you know, after 13 years, it's still going strong. It hasn't had any special treatment except ensuring that it's dry when it's put away. But other than that, it lives in a stuff sack and comes out whenever I'm going to use it. Okay, well, I hope you found this interesting. I'll be doing another one soon. I'm not sure which one I'm going to do next. I have a few ideas, but in a couple of weeks or so, you'll find out. Thanks for watching.